My second husband's name was Thor Che Dare.
Che, like Che Guevara?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And of course, the god of thunder and lightning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thor.
That's kind of common. I was going to ask if he is from Arrington or something like that, but I have some friends from there. So, alrighty. Oh, I should have the. Oh, that's the March 3rd one. I'm looking for the March 5th.
Wilfred, you look like you were laying down.
I'm on my couch because I don't have a home office, so I'm kind of sitting sideways.
Oh, it's the canoe or behind you and the mat or something. It's on plywood or something. It's on it. It looks like you're laying in front of it.
One of our artifacts that we moved.
Nice. I've lost all my backgrounds. I don't know what happened.
During an update, they reset a bunch of them. You have to add them back manually, which is disappointing because I like playing with them. Okay. That's March 3rd. There we go. Okay, we'll kick off right at 1 o'clock then. Waiting for Minister Osborne to connect. Oh, well, there goes my light.
My power went out earlier today and I was lost on an earlier Zoom meeting. So I'm hopefully, if I get lost, I'll try and get back on.
Yeah, power went out in Banfield, just landlines, and our office has a propane generator. So they got another probably 6 hours of power left, I think. Yeah, about 6 o'clock. Okay. So I would note that Minister Osborne only has about an hour at most, and I'm going to read that as I need to go by 1:55 kind of thing. So we'll try to keep it pretty pointed.
Chairman Jack, is the plan to carry on with the committee of the whole after this initial meeting?
I believe so. I think what we're going to do is we'll kick off the meeting specifically, and we could do so now and approve the agenda and then go from there.
So moved.
Okay. So having called to order, we're conducting our business today on the territories of the Pupatchisett and the Shot First Nations. That's where our office is located, but also all throughout New Channels and Coast Salish territory. And of course, the Kwangan speaking peoples, if Josie is in fact in Victoria, but I don't know.
No.
No, you're at home? Okay.
No.
Oh. Okay. Are you at Gort's?
I'm here in Port Alberni.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. So that puts us in place there. I don't think we really need to do any introductions as we all know each other. So Director Roberts has moved the agenda as presented. Would anyone like to second? Thank you, Director Cole. Alrighty. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. So the specific items for discussion are in the agenda. We have, what is it, 9 items here. Have to do with emergency management, multi-use paths, unauthorized camping, Banfield sewer, public access to private forest lands, Tofino General Hospital, West Coast General Hospital, the Albany Valley Aquatic Center, and other items of interest. as presented. I'm wondering, Minister Osborne, if you'd like to have any opening comments to start us off.
Sure. First of all, you please call me Josie. I definitely here in that capacity as your MLA today. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me to the meeting, and it's really lovely to see all your faces. It's really lovely to see all your faces. And I wish we could be doing this in person, but I know we're not there yet with COVID, and looking forward to have a full discussion. I think we're going to do our best to get through as much as we can in the next hour. But it's been maybe 100 and something days since I was elected as MLA, and it's been full double fire hoses, drinking water, and really enjoying it, and really starting to feel up to speed with a lot of the issues and looking at them with a new lens and a new eye, and really happy to share what I know, and most happy to hear from you today. So I'll just stop there.
I'll unmute myself first. Thank you. I think what we'll do is go item by item as quickly as we can, just to provide an overview of the topic and try to treat this as an extended kind of quick visit. I know that you have limited time, so hopefully we can touch on everything as we go through. First of which is the Emergency Management BC, their proposed financial guidelines. So this is something where I think perhaps, Douglas, you might be the best to introduce this particular topic. I don't know if Heather is around.
As I certainly very briefly, and Heather can fill in the gaps as needed. This is a province-wide conversation, Mr. Chair, that I'm sure Josie will be familiar with, and we're hoping very strongly that that the changes as originally anticipated do not go through, just because of the incredible extra burden it would put on the local taxpayers and the presumption that the program could be run on volunteers. So in as much as we've copied Josie on the board's letter, I think I would leave it there unless there's specific questions.
All right. Not seeing any specific comments or questions, we can go on to the multi-use path. The grant was unsuccessful, so I think this is something that we should note and kind of talk about what our next options might be for seeking out funding or help in achieving the completion of the path. Please go ahead, Douglas.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We have in next week's agenda a recommendation to apply for another grant. This project is getting improved every time in as much as we're doing detailed design now. And so that I think will make it more attractive. And we've also shared with you some of the feedback we've had with respect to why we weren't successful this time. Part of it had to do with the size of it and the amount of money available. So I think this is going to be, again, one of those ongoing conversations in which we will be looking for the strongest support possible in completing this link from community to community.
Thanks. Can you jog my memory? The grant that you applied for that was denied, was that through the SARP program or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll be looking for additional sources to complete that in another way, and we'll keep your office informed as to the status of that as we.
Please do. That's great. This is one of those places where, depending on the grant program that you're applying for, now that I have the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, I have to be cognizant of what hat I'm wearing, and so it gets a little bit more complicated in this situation. But it's nothing that we can't handle. And Andrea, obviously through my constituency office, will always help us navigate that. So
in this instance and at this meeting, every time I say your office, I will mean your constituency office.
Okay,
that's the nature of this meeting.
That's terrific. That's really great. Thank you.
Director McNabb, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just think this grant getting denied really was. It took the ability for us to apply for other things that were maybe a little bit less priority, but a priority. So now that grant money has completely disappeared on us. So that's my understanding, unless somebody can correct that. But it's unfortunate that we didn't maybe have a little better parameters for it, and then we wouldn't have probably put that in there.
Yeah, can I speak to that just a little bit, Chair? Thanks.
Go ahead.
Thanks for that, John. And yeah, it was a one-time granting opportunity, and it was a very immediate response grant opportunity. So it was through COVID relief and stimulus restart and trying to get money out as quickly as possible. And it did have a really tight turnaround time. And then, as will not surprise you in the slightest, to learn that the oversubscription rate was just huge. And so there clearly is a big need out there, and that's definitely something that everybody is seeing. So my advice to you would be a project like that remains a high priority of the board, is you are continuing to look for any granting stream that will fit into, and one that it's great that you've got the proposal largely prepared now. And as Doug was saying, it just gets better and better as you learn more and more about the design and all of that. But I hear you loud and clear. So thank you.
Yeah. I think that kind of begs the question of how we approach grant writing and that sort of thing in the future. And we could have a good conversation as a board about that. Okay, well, moving on, that brings us to the topic of unauthorized camping. So I would note that only a couple of days ago, we had a very inclusive meeting throughout the regional area and the groups involved, the agencies involved, talking about the challenges of illegal and unauthorized camping. And we found that it was affecting a wide assortment of different demographics, different geographies, quite differently. And therefore, even though it's one topic, it often touches on a lot of different issues that don't always touch or are adjacent to one another. There's quite a few things that we're starting to realize, but really we are recommending that we're going to start a region-wide working group that involves those agencies and any stakeholders that wish to take part in it. And we'll continue to gather data and present more information as time goes. We expect this to have a lot of parallels with other areas on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And we'll look to work with the AVICC and the EBCM on seeing what opportunities are available to address those challenges as they come up. The biggest thing, I think, is just understanding where and what kind of support we can expect from both the province, but also just the issues involved in the government as well. But we won't really talk about the government right now. We'll just talk about the issue of how we can work with the constituency office and keeping you in the loop. We would note that we really appreciated Andrea being there. She was quite helpful and, from what I understand, was taking really extensive notes. So from there, I think we're in good shape.
Great. Yeah, Andrea did share with me the very extensive notes, and we talked about the meeting, and it does sound like it was fruitful in that you had so many different parties there. And I think that's exactly the kind of multi-pronged, multi-stakeholder approach that this is really going to take. And thanks for acknowledging too that it's happening in other places. And certainly I am hearing, so I do a round of monthly calls. As you know, I do a round of monthly calls with local governments around BC. And so you're not alone. We're not alone on the West Coast in seeing this. And this is an issue that's being seen in the Kootenays and in the Okanagan and up north and other areas. So, it's not going to be something that is easy to solve overnight, but it is something that I think we all really do have to come together in this way. And I think what would be really useful for me and for Andrea is staying in close touch on this, but also just understanding better what's being seen and who is out there and what, both in terms of, who's there and why they're there, but also what services people are needing that need to be matched up. So this isn't an easy one. This really isn't an easy one. And
I think a part of the support that we'll need is going to be just understanding and navigating the kind of inter-ministry conversations that'll need to happen, especially when we're talking about like environmental impacts or the cumulative impacts of health and safety and so on and so forth. So I expect that to be like further in the future when we have a greater idea of how these issues separate out and that sort of thing. But that coordination will be important, I think.
Yeah, and thanks for your leadership on that, because I actually think that's probably one of the things that's going to make the biggest difference too. Everyone's going to have a little part of the solution, but no one party is going to have all of the answers or have all of the resources, frankly, right? So, yeah, thanks for that.
Okay. Are there any other comments on illegal camping? Thank you, Director McNabb, and then Director Paulson. Please go ahead.
So the one thought that I've had is that many of the camping vehicles or some of them are converted cars and trucks, but many of them are out of province. And I'm wondering if perhaps a little nudge to the federal government might be something that we might want to think about, because they're in some of the cases that I've heard of, they're actually driven by CERB. They've got money to come across Canada, and now they're here, and maybe they don't have enough money to go back home. But nevertheless, I think that migration, I think, has a bit of federal responsibility. And I don't know what you think about that. As you know, as we deal with it ourselves, we ask them to be part of one of the partners, or what?
I think I'm sure you saw in the news that that was a big subject of discussion just around the pandemic and interprovincial travel. And so the premier actually sought a legal opinion essentially to find out whether it would be possible to close borders or should the need arise. And the answer really is no. And I think that that's something that we all just have to accept, is that within Canada, we do have the ability to move around. And so we are going to get some interprovincial travel. And indeed, we depend on it to a certain extent when things are going well and we don't have a pandemic and we've got people moving around and traveling, and in tourism is what I'm really thinking about right here. So I think it's it's a conversation we have to be careful about. I think what the focus really needs to be is on the people themselves, and what is happening on the ground, no matter where they're from, but what's happening. And I hear all the concerns, and I saw them in the notes around sanitation and garbage, human health, all of those things. And so we really have to focus on answering that.
Thank you. Dr. Paulson and then Director Cole.
Not really a question, but just a comment with regards to that meeting we had a couple of days ago. And when I left that, I had a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it revolved around, Josie, you mentioned health and safety concerns, but I got some feedback from some of our agencies that there's a certain element, I don't want to paint them all with the same brush, but there's a certain element that feel they are operating above either local bylaws or above the law of the land. And there's a couple of situations out there, reading between the lines, that were actually quite dangerous for our agencies, staff, whether it be parks or RCMP or whatever. So there's been a bit of an escalation. And I know in that meeting, I said I was very alarmed that it appears in some of those situations it's like the Wild West, where there is no law and they think they're above the law. That's just an observation, Josie, and just it takes it to a different level, in particular above the health and safety, but to safety. So I just hope that something bad doesn't happen before we have to get heavy-handed. So just an observation.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ron. And I mean, I think that's really it, right? It's health and safety in all aspects. So it's health and safety of the people who are there, but also just in whatever circumstances people are finding when they go out there, from an enforcement aspect or protective services and that kind of a thing. And these are tough times. And I know you're seeing that in other communities too. And again, we're not alone on the West Coast in seeing this. And it's I don't mean to sound trite when I say that it isn't going to be solved overnight, but I think that's the awareness is something that's just so important. So that's why, again, I'm so thrilled that you took the time to bring the stakeholders together, because I've always believed that when you bring all the people to the table who have a little part of the solution, we're going to find it together, so to speak. But I recognize too that means that resources sometimes need to come to the table, or that there's certain risks that people are just less willing to take, and it's important that we talk about those.
Thank you. I think I have Director Cole, and did I miss anyone? And then Director Cote. Thank you. Please go ahead.
So I'm just going to make a comment about Director Paulson's comments, and then I just had one sort of concern myself. But after leaving the last meeting, I didn't say out loud, I might have mentioned to a couple people, but I'm wondering if there's any other private entities, like, so for example, Weyerhaeuser is the one that came to my mind, because at Boot Lagoon, their property had become quite volatile to the point of where they no longer have, my father-in-law did routine inspections for them for years, just as a maintenance level for their property. And it got so volatile, he was just asked to stop, but yet they haven't put anything in place to kind of correct that or combat it. So I don't know if there's any responsibility of, and I don't know if they're the only private entity that comes up that is of concern. So there was that. And then I'm concerned only because we're in March now, and I know we're going to have a working group and whatever, but before you know, we're going to be in the full throes of the summer again. So I just, in sort of sense of expedientness and whatever, we think we can get together.
Thank you for that comment. I think one thing that we'll need to do is continue to have those conversations with Ms. Turner, I think her name was, the representative of Weyerhaeuser, and see what intentions may result from that. I think this was her first meeting in regards to any of these things, and I think she's running it off the side of her desk. So as a result, I think we'll have to have a better handle with what's going on, and that will help us steer her in the direction of having a conversation with her superiors about resources that are necessary to do this right. Okay. Are there any other comments in regards to the illegal camping? Oh, sorry, Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Josie.
Hi, Penny.
So my comments on this issue, because Boot Lagoon is in my area, and I'm very aware, I get the calls from the residents that are there living in that area, and their concerns, and they're very valid. So I think that we need to be asking for provincial help here for more RCMP resources to help out with the legality of trying to make sure that these people are safe where they're at and safe from the community. I don't want to see public escalation the same way that happened in Coombs. So like, who knows what happened there, but people died. There was confrontation, and I think that because of that, thinking of how to resolve something like that, RCMP resources, mental health resources, housing needs, all need to be addressed. I've had conversation with Samantha Turner from Weyerhaeuser, and she is definitely doing this off the side of her desk. They have no ability to have any staff here, and they are actually withdrawing from that property. There, it's I believe it's ready to be sold. So they're not really that interested in putting any money into doing security and carrying on. Although Samantha did mention that they may have some funding available for the cleanup after at Boot Lagoon, because there is a lot of garbage left behind, human waste. You know, they've been living there with no resources and no facilities. So it's a problem that we really need to address. They have been given notice by the RCMP regarding them leaving, but where are they going to go? So my concern is that they're heading to the city, and with no resources, no RCMP enforcement, no mental health resources, no housing needs. So there's a problem, and I was so pleased to see us all get together, all the stakeholders, and really talk about, you know, this is the problem, how are we going to address it? And I'm really hoping that the province will be able to help us. And I do realize also that we are not alone.
Yeah, thanks for all of that. And I mean, you've raised a number of important issues that are all being tackled. So mental health and addiction, substance use, housing, public safety, policing, all of these issues. There are no quick, I mean, to staff up and get more RCMP officers, you know, as well as I do, that doesn't happen overnight. And in fact, you know, it may take months or years to really address that issue. But one thing that can be done, and I hope you did see the announcement around the Strengthening Community Services Fund that is being run through UBCM, that you can apply for funds to deal exactly with some of these immediate pressures for people who are experiencing homelessness, or people who are, I would say that the kind of camping or issues that are being seen in certain pockets within the regional district. This is the kinds of services that local governments are being asked to help step up and support around anything from site cleanup to enforcement to education to in the cases of maybe more urban centers. And the mayor of Port Alberni, Shari, and I have had this conversation around how this fund can help the city, for example, with some of the impacts that the people who are experiencing homelessness themselves are having, but also the impacts that is having on the surrounding residents and neighborhoods. And so if you extrapolate that out into the more of the remote areas, like along logging roads and what we're seeing there, the same kind of a thing. So I really, really, really strongly encourage the regional district to look into that fund, especially if in partnering with treaty nations and with municipalities to be able to pool your eligibility and go together. And this is something perhaps that's exactly the subject this new stakeholder working group can talk about, which is what kind of program can we pull together that we can apply to the province through UBCM to the province for funding to support. Another good thing to know about that fund is that so long as the expenses are eligible, it's actually retroactive. And so and I can certainly arrange to have a program person reach out and talk to Doug, for example. And so understanding exactly what the parameters of the program are, if the regional district finds that it's incurring some expenses before it even hears back about the success of a grant from that program, you'll be able to recoup those costs. So it's not, and again, and I recognize it's a short-term solution, it's a stopgap, it's an interim measure to help the regional district with the pressures that you're experiencing right now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I have Director McNabb up next.
So just to clarify, my comment with regards to the federal government was not on the actual tourists that are staying, for a few days or a week or something on Kennedy Lake, if that's what they're doing, but it's the ones that are actually squatting for months and months and have come from out of province. And so, I just really think that the federal government should have some responsibility there. I may be wrong, but it sure seems to me like if somebody is from the Yukon and then comes into our province and squats on Crown land or forest land, then requires medical help and assistance and hospitalization, that there should be some responsibility back to the federal government to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Director McNabb. Lastly, are there any other comments? Okay, the only thing that stuck out to me that I wanted to mention, and I think this is something that I don't want to steal Wilfred's thunder here, but when Ryan Anaka gave a rundown of the effects that illegal camping has had on treaty lands, it was pretty surprising to me the degree of kind of kickback that they've received from individuals who seem to be treating their the Ho-Chuklussit treaty land as somehow still, open for the public. And that's something where I think all of Monmouth may wish to have a conversation with you, or perhaps with Minister Rankin about in the future, just to ensure that we have the right resources available and the right coordination available to ensure that folks don't just know, but actually do respect the existence of treaty land. So I'll leave it at that for now. But that was something that really, actually, the way that Director Paulson was disturbed, it really disturbed me too, because that can get worse in the future. With that in mind, though, I think we'll turn to something a little less clean. We're going to talk about the Banfield Sewer Project. And so the idea here is that Hwayat's been working on a wastewater facility with the SCRD, Banfield specifically, and the Banfield Marine Science Center. And in conversations that we've had with Hwayat about this particular issue, the ACRD is finding that we would benefit from having a lot of, I think, either financial aid or some other resources involved in helping to form a kind of wastewater plan. I can't remember what it's called, liquid waste management plan, I believe it's called. And,
You're right.
and the idea there is that we use that as the stepping stone into doing further, and doing so in a way that is, you know, open and transparent and accountable to how a regional district should act. So I think that's, for the most part, the most engaging part on the CRD side of things. On the WIT side of things, there's always the issue of making sure we deal with cost increases due to COVID and that sort of thing. But that is something that I think WIT is trying to handle on their own end. And you or others may hear from that in the future. I'm wondering.
I
Please
definitely encourage you to reach out through my ministry office on this particular topic, so that we can have a staff member contact you, to both Huet and the regional district, to understand what planning grants are there for matters like liquid waste management plans. And Tom will know, he'll remember from Tofino, that there are programs available to help with that. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bob, did you have anything you'd like to add to that? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Bob Beck from Banfield. That's an old joke, sorry. Thank you for that. I think it's been a challenge for me, because when I became aware of the fact that Banfield community really wasn't interested in the cost, it concerned me that really wasn't practical or responsible. You know, given the growth that we're going to see and the current situation, the pollution in the harbor. So advice on how we can collectively move forward, support the project, and get the community involved. And you're absolutely right. It's going to take some grants and money, but thank you for your suggestion of reaching out directly to your other office with respect to assistance. So thank you, Josie, for your support.
Yeah, you're welcome, Bob Beckett from Banfield. We have to say that to each other. And just a couple comments I wanted to make about that. And again, having direct experience of knowing what it's like to face an expensive project with a very small tax base. This is not easy. And so I think in the case of Banfield, and there's a lot is changing, and with the road getting paved and the possible growth, I mean, there's so many conversations to be had around that, but they're really important to have, because forecasting into the future, I guess I would just put my Tofino hat back on for a second and say, you don't want to be in the situation that Tofino's in right now. And so you have the advantage of having the time to plan now for what is to come between Banfield and Huet, and knowing that you're going to have the right wastewater infrastructure to support that is really key. So good on you.
Thank you for that. I think that's an important note on the context, the historical context. How will things look in 20, 30 years? It's living memory right now, the switchbacks to get to Tofino. So those kind of things exist now for Huet and Banfield. Yeah, who knows what it'll look like in the future. Okay, that brings us to the next item, the public access to private forest lands. So this is something that we recently announced in regards to working with Mosaic on as well, but we're very much looking forward to involving as many stakeholders and governments as possible in this particular item. And this is something we'd like to just ensure that your constituency office is well aware of what's going on, because this has been an issue for as long as there's been private forest lands, to be honest. And so yeah, any engagement and help in the future that we can find, that'd be something that will be very beneficial for the entire region.
That sure will. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so now we're getting into the heart of a couple matters that are very important, I think, for the West Coast. We have the Tofino General Hospital. So this is something where we're really looking at what it will take to replace the Tofino General Hospital, and what it'll take to get to the next stages, and what the kind of work that we can do together, but what would help make this particular process go as smoothly as possible to make sure that this can happen in a good amount of time. I'm not going to go into any detail on this file. I'm pretty sure you know all about it. But I might give perhaps Director Steer and Director Cole and Director Roberts some opportunity to speak to it if need be. Tom, did you want to say anything?
No, thank you, Chairman Jack. Josie and I are pretty familiar with this topic together and have been working a long time previous to being elected. She's well aware of the concerns and has been in helping to project or to the strategy of moving forward and how we are going to tackle this. And the ACRD's support has been crucial in that, in moving this forward. So I'll leave it to see if Councillor Cole, or Director Cole and Director Roberts have anything to add.
Go ahead.
I think we all have the same information, and the only thing I can really add that is current is that we're making strides towards being able to take some of the pressure off the Tofino General Hospital with something in Ucluelet, just to relieve some of the pressure, because we thought that would happen quicker in the short term, and that we are not letting that fall by the wayside, but we are we're having a changing of the guards with our CAO, so we are keeping our eye on that ball and still moving forward. Things are just kind of really busy here, and so I don't have anything new to report on how we can be of assistance on that level, but I think that's it.
Thank you, Director Cole. Director Roberts, do you have anything to add?
Not really. And thanks again, Josie, for all your help in that, and your new position. I know you got a lot of work to do. Anyway, as far as the Tofino General Hospital is concerned, we're happy to support that initiative, the improvements that are going on, and the expansion where it can happen. So nothing more than Director Steer or Director Cole have mentioned already. I think it's imperative that we continue in that direction. And thank you for that.
Thanks. Director Steer, you have a supplemental?
Yeah, a quick supplemental. I did want to reiterate through the ACRD, but also there are some of the nations that are within our territory that aren't right now part of the ACRD, and they are an incredibly important part of this whole process, that their voice has been loud and clear on these initiatives and have been participating in a subcommittee of the Tofino General Hospital to bring those voices right from Heshquit all the way down. So I just wanted to include that is not just ACRD and the municipalities that are involved in this initiative.
Thank you for that, Tom. Lastly, we have Dr. McNabb. Thank you. And please go ahead.
So, I mean, I think one of the key things in all of this is to make sure what happened at West Coast General Hospital doesn't happen at the Tofino Hospital, and that it kind of gets pushed aside and back shelved for whatever reasons. And I don't really know what the reasons are. And I think this is something for us all to understand, is what motivates that back shelving, and make sure that we're aware of that factor and to keep that ball rolling forward, because these things have happened very quickly in like Comox and Campbell River, where they've actually had a very speedy resolve, and that's what I'd like to see in the Tofino Hospital. So I think it's I'd like to understand it. I'm sure, Josie, you may understand it at this point or may not, but it's something we need to get to. Thank you. And to say that absolutely the whole of the board and our hospital district are absolutely behind this.
Yes, thank you for that. I think, so a couple of things, I actually have a few things to say about this. So first of all, I think with respect to, like, John, what you were just mentioning around the Comox Valley and the Campbell River Hospital, once the project really got underway, those two projects really got underway and announcements were made, it did seem to roll out very quickly. But in talking with the hospital regional district chair from that area, it was years and years and years in the making. So I don't want anybody to think there is a kind of like a magic way to make this happen super, super quickly. That being said, there is absolutely a process, and I have learned so much more about it now that I'm on the with the province. And so what I've done is I've reached out to Minister Dix's office. I have a meeting with him coming up very soon, and it will be to sit down and discuss exactly these kinds of things. And so what I'm proposing is that I come back to probably a subset of you maybe in around a month's time or so, when I've got a break in the session would be the best for me, and actually sit down and have a much more detailed discussion around this. And to, maybe that's with the West Coast Committee, maybe it's just with the Regional Hospital District Chair and the Chair, and we'll figure it out. I'll work through Doug, or Andrea will work through Doug, and we'll get that set up. But there's no doubt about it, when you look around at various different hospital projects that have built in British Columbia, they always come with an incredible amount of community support, and more than just community support, community lobbying and effort and organizing. And I know the ingredients are all there on the West Coast because it's already starting to happen naturally. So you as the regional hospital district obviously will have your role, but you as elected officials and representatives of your communities have a very, very huge role. So I am here to help you and to help steer this and push this as much as I possibly can. I know just how important this is to my home community and to the West Coast, but really to the whole regional district, because we know how much people are moving back and forth. And, for example, knowing how important the West Coast General Hospital is to West Coasters as they are coming in and through, and the resources that you have in the Albany Valley that aren't out there on the West Coast. So, and again, just to Rochelle's point, the sort of alleviation of pressure at the hospital, and we were told this by the Ministry of Health or by Island Health before, and it remains true, that the ability to take a kind of like a regional approach and really look at that campus of care and facilities that helps people stay in their home communities as much as possible, so they don't have to travel great distances to get a blood test or more simpler things, or having dressings checked or whatever it is, some kind of follow-up. And that's going to be really important. And Ucluelet, Tofino, Houseit, they're the 3 largest centers on the West Coast. And I think that things are sort of ticking in that direction. And I think we're going to have to see more of that. So I'm in.
Yeah, that level of interconnectedness will really have an impact on more than just the West Coast. It'll have a positive impact on the Valley, and by extension, Banfield and Huet, especially when it comes to First Nations accessing medical care. I can imagine a lot of options that would be very beneficial for Tlaoquiat or a Houseit individuals coming in.
Yeah.
So
I also, maybe one final comment is I just really appreciate the way that things have often been framed in a wellness approach instead of a sickness approach. Mm-hmm. So we do think about hospitals as places where people go when they are sick, but thinking about facilities and the people who staff them as helping people stay well and then get well, I think is, that's the kind of shift I think we're seeing in the way that healthcare is being delivered anyways. And if anything, the pandemic's taught us that even more. So, I think the pandemic it's probably set aside a year's time of effort on the whole hospital replacement project, in a sense, because we've been so focused. Everybody's been so focused on the pandemic and keeping people healthy and safe. But I think we should all be looking inwardly and thinking, what have we learned from the pandemic that we could apply to the way we're delivering healthcare on the West Coast?
So we have 3 minutes before I'd like to go in camera to address 2 items, and we have 2 items left. So Director Cote, last word, and then we'll go to the next reminder.
I know it's not on the agenda, but part of this conversation should also include transportation, the bus service that's been taken away. So I won't take any more time on that.
Well, excellent. Maybe I'll take more time on it just for 2 seconds to say, very aware of this and have spoken directly to the Minister of Transportation and the Ministry of Jerry. It's called the Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. So I think there's some movement inside the province around just how important the intercommunity transportation is, and I'm hoping that we'll see something positive soon.
Great, thank you there. Okay, we have the renovation project for the West Coast General Hospital. We're just happy to see it underway. I did see your post about this is one of the first things you attended to yourself, and that was pretty good to see. And I think, what can we learn from the obstacles that Director McNabb has spoken to help the Tofino Hospital project move ahead? So I think that covers our bases pretty well. But the last proper item is the Albany Valley Aquatic Center. And I think really what we're looking to do is agreeing to sit down together to talk to one another, but also to engage with the public on what the options are available for an aquatic center and so on and so forth. And this is something that the regional district will be taking on in a good conversation. So we're going to keep in contact with your constituency office, but really what I want to do is just throw it to Director Minions to speak to it as well, because I know that this is something that she's taken on herself too. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I wasn't planning to speak too much today, just because I recently had the benefit of having a meeting with Josie, so feel very privileged to have time available. Yeah, I think this is something that we are working hard on, and it's been a big conversation on the regional district board. What that will look like and how we'll move forward. I don't know if I really have anything specific to add today. Josie, I did update you at our last meeting just generally on this and where we're at. Yeah, I'm not sure, John, if there's anything specific you want from me, and given the time, unless Josie has any advice, then I would love to hear that always.
Yeah, this is just something I wanted to make sure in the event that you had anything to bring up that you could. I know that this is something that you've brought up yourself on behalf of the city a couple of times, so I didn't want to like suppress all the conversation on this, but we are kind of butting up against in-camera time to have a discussion about a couple other items.
I don't have anything specific to add, but would love to hear from Josie if she has any suggestions or advice for us moving forward.
At this time, I don't. I think that what needs to happen is happening. And so doing what you're doing with public engagement and having the two local governments and the First Nations working together, just keep doing that. I mean, the more united you are coming forward when you come with the big asks, the better it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so before we move into the in-camera portion of the discussion, I'm wondering, Wendy, if we have anyone who wanted to have any questions or comments online?
Mr. Chair, I don't think there's anyone attending. No, we don't have any attendees today.
Okay, so in the event that we did, better to check. With that in mind, and with the time that we have, I'm wondering if we could move to go in camera, please. Thank you, Director Shannon, seconded by Director Beckett. All those in favor?